Introduction. Love has a way of blinding us, wrapping us in illusions so thick that we refuse to see the truth, even when it's right in front of us. I was no different. When I met Chioma, I believed I had found my soulmate, the woman who would stand by my side through life's highs and lows. She was everything I thought I wanted, beautiful, charming, and full of life. I ignored the warnings, silenced my doubts, and convinced myself that love was enough to bridge the gaps between us. But love isn't always enough. This is the story of how I lost myself in a marriage built on deception, how I fought to hold on to something that was never real, how I gave everything to a woman who was only looking for a way out. Chapter 1. The Call to Africa. Andre had always been caught between two worlds. Born in Jamaica, grew up in Canada, he often felt the pull of both cultures but had never truly embraced one over the other. Living in Toronto, he blended into the multicultural fabric of the city, yet something was always missing. His childhood friend, Nana Opoku, had always nudged him toward his African roots. "You should visit Africa, man," Nana would say during their high school years. "Find out where you're really from." At the time, Andre dismissed it. He didn't see the need to connect with a history he'd never known. But as the years passed, the idea lingered in his mind. Now in his 30s, it became a burning curiosity. What if Nana was right? What if there was more to his identity than what he had learned growing up in Canada? Andre had been working as a music producer for years, building a career on his own terms. His passion for music kept him grounded, but it was also a reminder that he had never ventured far from his comfort zone. Africa, with its sprawling landscapes and rich cultures, called to him in ways he couldn't ignore. He started looking into travel options, determined to make the journey his next big adventure. Initially, he considered Ghana. Nana had always spoken highly of his homeland, and the allure of discovering more about his ancestry made the country an obvious choice. But after researching the cost of a 2-week stay, Andre quickly realized that the trip would break his budget. So he looked elsewhere on the continent. Nigeria stood out. It was rich in history, culture, and, most importantly, affordable. For just $500 Canadian, Andre could book a hotel for 2 weeks in Lagos. The decision was made. Chapter 2. Arrival in Lagos. The flight was long, but when Andre finally touched down in Lagos, he was wide awake, energized by the thought of being in Africa for the first time. The humid air hit him like a wave as he stepped off the plane, and a strange scent lingered in the air, something salty like the sea, though he wasn't sure where it was coming from. It was different, unfamiliar, but he didn't mind. He was here, in a place that felt both alien and oddly familiar. Lagos was a city of contrasts. On one hand, the poverty was evident. Shacks and dilapidated buildings mixed with modern structures, streets crowded with people and vehicles. But despite the challenges, Andre couldn't help but notice how alive the place felt. People smiled, laughed, and chatted on every corner. There was an energy here that he hadn't seen back in Canada or the US, where people often seemed weighed down by the grind of life. In Lagos, life was loud, chaotic, and full of possibility. A few days into his stay, Andre reached out to Mona, a woman he had met online. They had been friends for months, exchanging messages and getting to know each other before his trip. She had been kind enough to offer to show him around. Mona was a vibrant, confident woman, and when she arrived at the hotel to pick him up, Andre felt an immediate sense of comfort. She smiled warmly as they greeted each other.
"So, how are you liking Nigeria so far?"
she asked, already taking the lead as their tour guide. "It's amazing," Andre replied, his voice filled with awe as he looked around at the bustling streets of Lagos. "It's so different from anything I've seen before." Mona laughed, a melodic sound that made Andre feel more at ease.
"You're going to love it here. Trust me, there's so much to see. You haven't even scratched the surface yet."
And so the days passed. Mona took him around Lagos, introducing him to her friends and family. Andre was struck by the warmth and hospitality of the people, despite the country's challenges. They went to markets, explored neighborhoods, and even ventured to Victoria Island, where the contrast between rich and poor was especially stark. Still, it was hard not to fall in love with the place, but there was something about the air, the strange smell of the sea, the humidity that clung to his skin, that never quite left him. It wasn't unpleasant, just odd. It took a few days, but André grew used to it, the smell fading into the background as he immersed himself in the rhythm of life in Lagos. One night, Mona invited him out to a local club. She was friendly, easygoing, and fun to be around, but André wasn't entirely sure if he saw her as anything more than a friend. As the night went on, they found themselves back at her place, a little tipsy, but still fully aware of what was happening. They ended up in bed together. The next morning, André felt conflicted. Mona was a beautiful woman, but he knew deep down that she wasn't the one. He liked her. She was intelligent, kind, and fun. But something didn't click. He didn't want to lead her on or make her think he was using her for sex. "Mona," he said softly as they lay in bed together, "I think we should just be friends. I don't want you to think that's what this was about." Mona nodded, a slight frown crossing her face.
I get it, André. No hard feelings. I just wanted to show you a good time while you're here.
They agreed to keep things platonic from that point on, and the air between them cleared. They continued to hang out, but the dynamic had shifted, and André appreciated the honesty. Chapter 3: The Search for a Wife. As the days ticked down on his trip, André found himself at a crossroads. He had mentioned to Mona that he was looking for a wife, and asked if she had any single friends. Mona had introduced him to several women, each of whom had qualities that he liked, but none of them felt like the one. He wanted a woman who could understand him, someone who could connect with him not just on a surface level, but deep down. Someone who could share his dreams and struggles. It wasn't long before he met Chioma. She was everything André had imagined a Nigerian woman to be: beautiful, graceful, and confident. But there was something about her that drew him in deeper. She had an aura of mystery that he couldn't quite place, something intriguing yet warm, and that made André feel both comfortable and slightly anxious in her presence. Chioma was nothing like the other women Mona had introduced him to. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence, and she spoke with a calm, measured voice that made every word seem important. They spent the day walking around Lagos, talking about life, love, and the future. André found himself captivated by her, his initial wariness melting away as he realized how much they had in common. She spoke about her family, her dreams, and even some of the struggles she had faced. André, who had been cautious about getting emotionally involved, began to let his guard down. Over the next few days, André and Chioma spent more and more time together. Their connection deepened, and André couldn't deny that he was falling for her. She wasn't like Mona, who was always upbeat and playful. Chioma was more reserved, thoughtful, and kind, traits that André admired. But there was something else. Mona had warned him about Chioma. She had told him that, although she liked her, she didn't think Chioma was a good fit for him. At first, André brushed off Mona's concerns. It was just a gut feeling, he thought. Besides, Mona was only trying to look out for him. How could she possibly know what was best for him in such a short time? Still, the warning lingered in the back of his mind. He didn't want to let it influence his feelings, but as he spent more time with Chioma, he started to wonder. What was Mona seeing that he wasn't? Maybe it was just her protective instinct kicking in, he thought. And yet, as he spent more time with Chioma, it became clear that she had a way of making him feel like he was the most important person in her world. André couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward her, nor could he deny how much he liked being around her. Despite his reservations, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had found someone special. Chapter 4: The Proposal. When André returned to Toronto, he kept in close contact with Chioma. They spoke daily, video chatting for hours, learning about each other's lives, thoughts, and ambitions. The more they spoke, the more André realized how compatible they were. It didn't take long before he started thinking about the future. After 5 months of communication, André decided to take the next step. He wanted to marry Chioma. He'd already spoken to her father, asking for his permission to marry his daughter. Her father had been delighted, telling Andrei he would be honored to have him as a son-in-law. But even with all of this excitement, doubts crept in. The warning from Mona echoed in his mind, especially after he mentioned it to Chioma. When Andrei brought it up, Chioma didn't take it well. She became defensive, questioning why he would listen to Mona's opinion. Her reaction, though, only deepened Andrei's concerns. Chioma reached out to Mona, calling Andrei in a three-way conversation. What started as a simple conversation quickly escalated into an argument, with Chioma confronting Mona about her thoughts on their relationship. It was a painful exchange, and in the end, Mona blocked Andrei, and their friendship ended that day. Andrei tried to push past the drama, reminding himself of his feelings for Chioma. Despite the tension with Mona, Andrei was determined to move forward with his plans. He visited Chioma in Nigeria twice, and during each trip, they grew closer. His feelings for her intensified, and the love he felt for her overshadowed any lingering doubts. In June 2018, they finally married in a traditional Nigerian ceremony. Andrei paid the bride price, bought 2 cows, and fully embraced the culture that Chioma came from. Despite the challenges, their wedding was beautiful, and Andrei couldn't help but feel proud of the life they were building together. But little did he know, the honeymoon period was about to come to an end. Chapter 5. The Prank That Shook Everything. Just 2 months into their marriage, something unexpected happened. Chioma, in what she later claimed was a prank, told Andrei she was pregnant with another man's child. At first, Andrei thought it was a joke. "Are you serious?" he asked, laughing nervously, unsure if she was trying to pull his leg. But Chioma wasn't laughing. She looked him in the eye, and the weight of her words sank in. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, "but it's not yours." Andrei's heart dropped to his stomach. He didn't know how to react. His mind raced, and every worst-case scenario flooded his thoughts. Had he made a mistake? Was this the woman he thought he knew? For 2 days, Andrei couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, could barely function. He was consumed by thoughts of betrayal, of trust, broken before it could even fully form. He had married this woman, committed to her, and now she was telling him this. Then, finally, Chioma called him again. She admitted it had been a prank. But by then the damage had already been done. The seed of doubt had been planted, and Andrei found himself questioning everything. He reached out to both his parents and Chioma's. Everyone was upset with her, but Andrei's family, especially his parents, advised him not to leave her. "Marriage is hard," his father said. "You made a commitment. Don't throw it away so easily." So Andrei stayed, but even though they were still together, something had changed. Trust had been broken, and as much as Andrei tried to move past it, the feeling of betrayal lingered, growing stronger with each passing day. By the time 2019 arrived, the cracks in Andrei and Chioma's marriage were more evident than ever. Chioma had become argumentative, often insulting Andrei, belittling him over small things. Their differing religious beliefs, Andrei was Pentecostal and Chioma was Catholic, added tension to their relationship. Every time they argued, Chioma threatened divorce. The constant push and pull was wearing Andrei down. In the midst of the tension, Andrei started feeling something he hadn't felt before: regret. He had invested so much into this relationship, and yet, every time he tried to work things out, Chioma pushed him further away. She started pulling away emotionally, and Andrei couldn't help but wonder if he was being manipulated. One final trip to Nigeria in 2019 brought things to a head. Andrei had planned to finalize their marriage with a court wedding, but the night before, he had an epiphany. He didn't love her anymore. He was done. The next morning, as they were about to head to the courthouse, Andrei cancelled the wedding. Chioma's reaction was heartbreaking. He saw her face fall, and for a moment, he second-guessed his decision. But deep down, he knew he had to follow through. His heart wasn't in it anymore. Chapter 6. A Heartbreaking Decision. Chioma's reaction was unforgettable. When Andrei told her he was calling off the wedding, the look on her face was a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. Her eyes seemed to lose their shine, her lips trembling as she tried to hold back tears. It was a look that Andrei would never forget, but it was also a look that confirmed something deep inside him. he had made the right decision. Chioma pleaded with him, begging him not to end their marriage. She called one of her friends, trying to convince Andrei to change his mind, but nothing could undo the damage that had been done. The trust had been shattered, and no amount of tears or apologies could fix it. "I can't do this anymore, Chioma," Andrei said quietly, his voice steady but his heart heavy. "I can't keep living like this. We're just not the same anymore." Chioma's desperation grew, and Andrei felt guilty for putting her through this pain. But the guilt was nothing compared to the overwhelming sense of relief he felt when he made the decision to end it. He had been trapped in a marriage that was falling apart, and now, for the first time in months, he felt free. He packed his bags, said his goodbyes, and flew back to Toronto. The distance between them was now physical, but it also felt like a deep emotional divide had formed. Andrei tried to move on, but the pain of the failed marriage lingered. It wasn't just the failed marriage itself, but the betrayal, the lies, and the manipulation that left scars deeper than he ever could have imagined. Back in Toronto, Andrei tried to rebuild his life. He met other women, but none of them came close to Chioma. The loneliness was suffocating, but Andrei couldn't ignore the feeling of freedom that had come with ending things. His life was his own again, even though it felt like a new chapter was starting under the weight of what had happened. One night, while scrolling through Snapchat, he came across a young woman named Vanessa. She was 25, lively and confident. Andrei sent her a message, and they quickly hit it off. After some conversations, Andrei decided to make another trip to Nigeria. Maybe it was a distraction. Maybe it was a way to find something, anything, to fill the void left by Chioma. But something in the back of his mind reminded him that this was nothing more than a temporary fix. When Andrei arrived in Nigeria, he was surprised by the chemistry he had with Vanessa. She was young, energetic, and fun to be around. She made him feel alive again, but deep down, Andrei knew that she wasn't the one. She was more of a fling, someone to pass the time with. There was no real emotional connection, and deep down, he realized that this relationship was more about escaping the pain of his failed marriage than about finding something real. One night, Vanessa came over to his hotel room and things escalated. They spent the night together, and the next morning, Vanessa asked if her sister could join them. That was when Andrei realized something about the kind of person Vanessa was. She didn't care about relationships or commitments. She was just looking for a good time. Her request to bring her sister into the mix made Andrei uncomfortable, and he started to question his own decisions. How many men had she and her sister been with? It was a question that nagged at him, and he found himself missing Chioma in a way that he hadn't expected. Despite everything that had gone wrong, there was something about her that Vanessa and her sister couldn't replicate. Andrei made an excuse for Vanessa to leave and called an Uber to take her back to her sister's house. But that decision led him down a path that would change everything. Chapter 7. Caught in the Act. As Andrei sat in the Uber, he realized that something wasn't right. His thoughts were consumed by the guilt of cheating on Chioma, but more than that, he began to wonder if he was even capable of loving anyone anymore. When the Uber dropped off Vanessa at her sister's house, Andrei gave the driver the address to Chioma's house. He wanted to surprise her. It was foolish, impulsive, but he had to know if things had truly ended between them, or if there was still a chance for reconciliation. As the Uber driver pulled up to Chioma's house, Andrei was already second-guessing his decision. The minutes on his phone had run out, so he asked the driver to call Chioma for him. When the call connected, Andrei could hear Chioma's voice on the other end. There was an odd tension in her tone, but Andrei brushed it off. He didn't think much of it until she asked to speak to the Uber driver. That's when Andrei began to realize something was off. Chioma's tone changed, and the conversation quickly shifted into a language Andrei couldn't understand. He could tell that Chioma wasn't happy, and the sudden shift in her demeanor sent a chill down his spine. When they arrived at Chioma's house, the Uber driver unloaded Andrei's bags and quickly drove off without saying a word. Andrei walked up to the door, his heart pounding. He wasn't prepared for what was about to happen. Chioma opened the door, and before Andrei could even say a word, she spoke first. "So," she said, her voice cold and cutting, "how was the sex with Vanessa? Was it good?" Andrei froze. He felt the weight of the question hit him like a punch to the gut. How did she know? Then it hit him. When he'd asked the Uber driver to call her, he had unintentionally set up his own betrayal. The driver had told her everything. He had given her the hotel name, the details, even Vanessa's number. Caught red-handed, Andre didn't know how to respond. He wasn't sure what to say, but he knew one thing for certain. Their marriage was over. The trust was gone, and so was the love he had once felt for her. In that moment, Andre understood why he had made the choices he did, but that didn't make it any easier. Yes, Andre said, the words slipping out of his mouth before he could stop them. It was good. I enjoyed it. Chioma's silence spoke volumes. There was no anger, no tears, just quiet resignation. She understood why he had done it, but that didn't make it hurt any less. The next day, Chioma gathered her family together to confront Andre. She cried as she explained how hurt she was, but her sister Abigail looked at Andre like he was the villain. Andre tried to explain that it wasn't just about the affair, but about everything leading up to it. The lies, the emotional neglect, the manipulation. Chioma's parents understood, but they told Andre that it was still his duty to try and make the marriage work. Chapter 8. The Final Straw. As 2020 rolled around, the world was struck by the COVID-19 pandemic. With the Canadian government tightening travel restrictions, Andre made one last attempt to salvage his marriage. He booked a flight to Nigeria to finalize their court wedding, believing that maybe, just maybe, they could start fresh. But when he arrived in Nigeria, the problems didn't disappear. Chioma's behavior continued to deteriorate. She was distant, uninterested in anything Andre did, and became fixated on getting a visa to Canada. It was clear to Andre now, Chioma didn't care about their marriage anymore. She was only focused on getting to Canada, using their relationship as a means to an end. Andre felt trapped in a marriage that was built on false pretenses, and he couldn't do it anymore. As Chioma finally received her visa approval, Andre realized that everything had been a lie. She didn't love him. She loved what he could give her. And so when Chioma arrived in Canada in September 2023, Andre had already made up his mind. Andre felt a mix of anticipation and dread. He had been waiting for this moment for years, eager to finally have his wife by his side after all the delays and frustrations with immigration. He had imagined a joyful reunion, filled with warmth, hope for the future, and the promise of new beginnings. But the moment he saw her at the airport, something felt off. Andre had a bouquet of roses in his hands, ready to give her a warm embrace after their long separation. But when Chioma stepped out into the arrivals area, she barely acknowledged the gesture. Her hug was stiff, mechanical, like she was going through the motions. There was no spark, no excitement in her eyes. It felt more like a formal greeting than a reunion between husband and wife. "Hi," she said flatly, not even bothering to smile. Andre's heart sank. This wasn't the woman he had married, the woman he had dreamed of building a life with. Her coldness was palpable. It stung. "How was your flight?" Andre asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "It was fine," Chioma replied, her tone lacking any enthusiasm. "Let's just go." Andre felt a chill run down his spine, but he tried to ignore it. Maybe she was just tired from the long journey. He had to remind himself that things had been difficult between them before, but they had always worked through it. He hoped this time would be no different. They made their way to the Airbnb Andre had booked, eager to spend some quality time together. He had hoped that being alone with her would help them reconnect. But when they arrived, Chioma's attitude didn't change. She barely acknowledged him, sitting on the couch, eyes glued to her phone. Later that evening, as they were getting ready for bed, Chioma surprised Andre with a strange statement. "We're not having any sex," she said coldly, her eyes never leaving her phone. Andre froze. It felt like a slap in the face. They hadn't seen each other for over a year, and now that they were finally together, she was rejecting him. His mind raced, wondering if there was something else going on. Was she upset with him? Was she still angry about the past? "Why?" Andre asked, his voice shaky. "I don't understand. We've been apart for so long. We're finally together." "I'm just not in the mood," Chioma said dismissively, brushing him off without looking at him. Andre felt a wave of confusion and frustration. This wasn't how he had imagined their reunion. This wasn't what he had been waiting for. The emotional walls between them were more apparent than ever, and it felt like Chioma was intentionally pushing him away. "Are you trying to use sex as a weapon?" Andre asked, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Chioma's eyes flicked up to meet his for a brief moment before she turned away again. "I'm not interested, Andre. Just leave it." Chapter 9. The Cracks Widen. The next few days were a blur. They stayed in the Airbnb for 4 days, and though Andre tried to make the best of it, Chioma remained distant. There were no long conversations, no shared laughter, just an uncomfortable silence that hung between them. Andre couldn't understand what had happened. He had imagined that when Chioma arrived, they would pick up where they had left off, but instead it felt like they were strangers. Chioma met Andre's parents, but there was no warmth in her interactions with them. His father liked her, but his mother remained suspicious, a lingering mistrust that Andre had never been able to shake off. It only added to the growing sense of unease in their relationship. When they moved to Andre's basement apartment after the Airbnb, things didn't improve. Chioma continued to withdraw, showing no interest in spending time together or in getting to know his friends. One evening, when Andre took her to visit his friend Chanel and her 4 children, Chioma seemed bored and uninterested in the family dynamics. "I bought you a winter jacket," Andre said, trying to make her feel welcome in the Canadian cold. She barely acknowledged it, instead focusing on her phone. Andre was starting to feel like a stranger in his own life, and the weight of it all was crushing. Things continued to spiral downward. Chioma began demanding that they only have sex on Sundays. Andre couldn't make sense of it. Why just Sundays? It felt more like a power play than a request. Every day, there seemed to be a new issue that they couldn't resolve. Chioma rejected every suggestion Andre made to improve their relationship. When he suggested going to marriage counseling, she refused. When his friend Chanel offered to help, Chioma rejected her advice too. She seemed determined to reject everything Andre put forward, no matter how well-intentioned. As the weeks passed, Andre found himself emotionally drained. Every day he felt more isolated, more disconnected from the woman he had married. Chioma's behavior became erratic. She seemed to pick fights over the smallest things, her bitterness growing with each passing argument. One evening, Chioma insisted that Andre take her to the Canadian border. "I need to go there," she kept repeating, but when Andre asked her why, she could never give a clear answer. "What's going on, Chioma?" Andre asked, his patience starting to wear thin. "Why do you want to go to the border? What's this all about?" She refused to explain, and when Andre wouldn't give in, she locked herself in the living room of Chanel's house. Chioma refused to sleep in the same bed with him, instead choosing to sleep on the floor. It became a pattern. Every time Andre tried to engage, she pushed him away. It was like she was trying to punish him for something, though Andre couldn't figure out what. But the final straw came when Chioma's visa situation took another turn. The Canadian Immigration Office had rejected her permanent residency application, and with the deadline looming, she became desperate. She begged Andre to appeal the decision, but after everything that had happened, he simply couldn't bring himself to do it. "I'm not appealing it," Andre said, his voice firm. "This marriage is over. I can't do this anymore." Chioma was furious. The anger she had been holding back for months now boiled over, and Andre saw the true extent of her manipulation. She wanted to stay in Canada at any cost, and she was willing to do anything to get what she wanted. Chapter 10. The Final Betrayal. Chioma's desperation reached a new level when Andre refused to appeal the visa decision. At first, she became quiet, but then she started giving him what he thought was affection, sex, attention, kindness. But it was all a ploy to get what she wanted. Andre knew this was manipulation, but he also knew that he had given everything he had to make their marriage work. The fact that Chioma was willing to go this far to get what she wanted made it clear that she never truly cared for him. When Chioma eventually moved in with Chanel's mom, Andre felt a deep sense of betrayal. She had not only refused to honor their vows, but now she was actively working against him. He had tried everything to make this marriage work, but Chioma had shown him that she was more interested in using him for a ticket to Canada than building a life with him. As if things couldn't get worse, Andre received a call from Immigration and Border Services. They had been notified that Chioma had violated the terms of her visitor visa by staying in Canada longer than allowed and working without proper authorization. The evidence of her actions was irrefutable. But it wasn't just about the visa anymore. Andre had come to the painful realization that the woman he had married, who had promised to love and cherish him, had never truly loved him at all. She had used him, manipulated him, and played him like a pawn in her game. And now she was gone. Conclusion. On January 5th, 2024, the phone rang, breaking the silence in my apartment. I barely glanced at the screen before answering. Hello?
Mr. Pryce?
The voice on the other end was firm, professional, too professional.
This is Detective Reynolds from the Toronto Police Department. We need you to come in for questioning regarding a domestic violence report filed by your wife, Chioma.
My heart stopped. I gripped the phone tighter, my mind racing. What? What are you talking about?
There's a warrant out for your arrest.
The officer continued.
We need you to turn yourself in immediately.
I felt the blood drain from my face. The room started spinning. This couldn't be happening. After everything, after the lies, the betrayal, the manipulation, Chioma had played her final card. And this time, she wasn't just trying to ruin my name. She was trying to take away my freedom. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I had given this woman everything: my love, my trust, my time, my money. And now she was trying to take the one thing I had left: my future. I looked around my apartment, the walls closing in on me. I had fought so hard to move on, to escape her web, to rebuild my life. But just when I thought I was free, she pulled me back in. The officer's voice echoed through the phone.
Mr. Pryce, we suggest you cooperate.
I swallowed hard, my fists clenched. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my keys. If Chioma wanted to destroy me, she'd have to do a hell of a lot more than this. I was done being a victim, and no matter what happened next, I was going to make sure the truth came out.
That is going to be it for part 1 of this 2-part series. Stay tuned to find out what happens to Andre and Chioma's marriage. This exciting story will continue in part 2 of Love That Went Wrong. Stay tuned. The end.